Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay, here to do another video to talk about Bad Bunny last night performance at Super Bowl 60. First off, I want to congratulate the Seattle Seahawks in winning their second Super Bowl, their first in 10 years, and defeating the New England Patriots. Um, um, But here we're here to talk about the performance, and that was the very controversial performance of Bad Bunny, reggaetonero, Latin superstar Bad Bunny, the guy they're claiming to be the most popular performer on Spotify, outselling the streams of the likes of Taylor Swift, The Weeknd, Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and others. What did I think of it? It was a tremendous celebration of Puerto Rican and Caribbean heritage. It starts off with Bad Bunny. He's like around these people and they're playing dominoes. And he's coming out dressed in a football jersey, carrying a football, right? And then he's going around singing his various songs. And then he drops into a home where they're having a house party. And it's like it's supposed to represent the ghettos of Puerto Rico, what they call the caseríos, the projects of Puerto Rico, right? And then he's around these sugarcane fields, and that's supposed to represent, the peasantry of Puerto Rico. He does a little bit of gasolina, a little bit of a reggaeton, type melodies that he does. And then you have him talking about climbing up the electric poles as a reference, as a political reference to the blackouts that often happen in Puerto Rico due to the electrical situation. Then you have him in a bodega, representing the migratory patterns of Puerto Ricans to the mainland United States, particularly New York City. So it's basically a cultural odyssey of of Puerto Rico, and I really enjoyed it because to me, it's like it's showing a different aspects of what it's like to grow up as a Puerto Rican, here in uh, in the United States as well as in Puerto Rico itself. To remind people, especially the haters, that Puerto Rico is part of the United States and has been part of the United States, and Puerto Ricans have been citizens of the United States since 1917. Now, there have been complaints since the beginning, since the Super Bowl. Apple put it on Apple Music. Since they announced that they were going to have Bad Bunny as a performer, there have been complaints from people that he doesn't have any songs in English. People don't know who he is. As a matter of fact, because of his performance, because of them continuously going, staying the course and going with him, there was a counter performance put on by TPUSA, Erica Kirk's, Charlie Kirk's organization, now run by Erica Kirk, his widow. And that featured the likes of Jelly Roll, the likes of Kid Rock, and other country slash rock performances. Basically, what this was to me was sour grapes. This was like, okay, we're not invited to the party. We're mad that they're having something in celebration of Hispanic heritage, in celebration of Caribbean heritage, in celebration of a heritage outside of the mainland United States, outside of Anglo culture. So we're gonna have our own, and they got a lot of viewership here on YouTube, but nowhere near the viewership that Bad Bunny got. And then online, you had other celebrities. Uh, the Paul brothers weighed in. We talk a lot about the Paul brothers on this channel, particularly Logan Paul, but as well as his brother Jake. They weighed in on this concert, this mini concert. Jake Paul calls Bad Bunny a fake American. Says purposely skipping the Super Bowl due to this fake American. But it and here's the thing though, when it comes to the Paul brothers, what Lisa? I watched it last night. What are you talking about? I watched the entire performance last night. Anyway, yeah. When it comes to the Paul brothers, hey, with Lisa, what's going on? When it comes to the Paul brothers, this is particularly egregious when it comes to them because they live in Puerto Rico. So for them to live in Puerto Rico, they moved from California to Puerto Rico to as a tax haven. For them to live in Puerto Rico and then to spit in the face of this performance that symbolizes Puerto Rican culture is amazing. Is particularly egregious to me. The parts I loved was the parts that I really loved was when Ricky Martin came out and when Lady Gaga came out and she sang "To Die with a Smile" in a salsa version, right? She had a salsa band because they had a wedding there, right? They had a wedding. Uh, a wedding took place in the middle of a Super Bowl performance. I think that's one of the cutest things ever. That couple will be like in the future as they get older, they'll be like, who was at your wedding? 70,000 people, right? At Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California. You know what I'm saying? So Jake Paul comes out and says that, but Logan Paul comes out then and says, that Puerto Ricans are Americans and that Bad Bunny is proud to be an American. He brought out the bunch of flags. The American flag was there, but also other flags were there. Belize flag was there. You had Venezuela. You had Mexico. You had Dominica. You had Dominican Republic. Aaron is saying, why hasn't Puerto Rico gotten statehood yet? So strange that it hasn't yet. Well, there's many reasons why, Aaron. One of the reasons has to do with Puerto Ricans not wanting statehood. They don't really want statehood. It's a very unpopular position among the people of Puerto Rico simply because, well, there is a cultural difference, obviously, between Puerto Ricans and other Americans, and also because of the tax situation. So essentially, it makes it a tax haven for American celebrities such as the Paul brothers. So they had things to say. Chris Brown had negative things to say as well about the performance. And of course, Donald Trump had negative things to say. Donald Trump claiming that nobody understood it. Donald Trump coming down on the fact that there was a lot of twerking. In it as well, claiming that it was inappropriate for kids, which there was twerking. They don't call it twerking in Latin America and reggaeton. They call it perreo, right? But it's basically the same dance. Um, and you had the different genres of Puerto Rican music represented, not only reggaeton, but also Bomba y Plena when they came out in the white outfits with the white dresses. This is a traditional Afro Puerto Rican dance that they do, Bomba y Plena, that originated in the cities of Ponce, in the city of Ponce. among Afro descendants in Puerto Rico, right? You had the Jibaro hats. Jibaro is a traditional folk hero among Puerto Ricans, that represents like Puerto Rican values and things of that nature. So it was it was a lot. And then of course you had salsa, which salsa, when by the time they got to the New York portion of it, it tells another story. The original Puerto Rican story, colonization, the sugar island, the sugar trade that took place in the Caribbean, then the Puerto Rican migration to to the United States, particularly places like New York and Chicago in the 1940s and 50s, and the creation of salsa, which came about in the 60s and 70s. Then you had like Latin pop music, which was represented by like Ricky Martin, right? And then you had, you even have Boogaloo, Latin Boogaloo, and that's where "To Die with a Smile," the salsa vacation version of it, comes in, because when Latin Boogaloo, they mixed American pop music and R&B music with Latin rhythms of bomba y plena and mambo, which mambo is Cuban, but it was basically, the same thing of Afro Latin rhythms. So there was so much deep culture and heritage represented in there. But like I said, a lot of people had a lot of shit to say. I think with Logan Paul, he wants to, and this is how WWE ties in with this. He wants to represent. He wants to work with Bad Bunny, a match with Bad Bunny, perhaps at WrestleMania. You know, you know what I mean. So he kind of had to tell his brother to back off. Hey, wait a minute, don't say anything too bad about Benito, because I want to work this match with him. I want to do a match with him, and draw some money with him. But I think if they were working the kayfabe thing, it would have been cooler if Logan Paul would have just came out against them and came out like anti Bad Bunny. So then it could have been like, okay, now him and Bad Bunny have beef on Twitter, and they could drag it to the wrestling ring, because both guys are, both guys are. Yes, obviously, Aaron, that is a thing. That is, but I'm glad Aaron brought that up. That Aaron says that when he saw all the flags as an Australian, it signaled to him that they are planning for world domination. They're looking to expand. Yes, the NFL has been particularly parochial. American football, the history of American football comes out of rugby, obviously, in the late 1800s. And then a gentleman by the name of Walter Camp devises and revises the rule, puts some soccer in there, and is basically an American game. But now the NFL is looking to expand their horizons and looking to become more international. It happened with baseball, where baseball became international, and now more non-Americans, more Latinos, are baseball players now than even Americans. So they're looking to expand. They're looking to export. They want to have games in Mexico. They want to have games in London. That was the motivation behind using Bad Bunny, because of his appeal all around the world, in particularly Spanish-speaking nations where they would want to spread the game to. It's sort of soft imperialism, if you will. Like they used to do with baseball. Once upon a time, baseball in the 19th century and early 20th century, baseball was America's pastime. But as the world became more exciting, people became bigger. Football started out much like basketball as a college sport, primarily a college sport, and then eventually became professional, right? And they exported baseball around the world, so now they want to export football around the world, American football. But it's going to be a hard way to go, because to most of the world. I know Australia is a little bit different. Aaron, and correct me if I'm wrong. Australia has Australian football, which is similar to gridiron football, which is similar to football, what we call football. But to the rest of the world, to Europe and particularly Europe and Latin American countries, football is soccer. You know what I mean? A lot of Latin American countries. Puerto Rico, not really so much because, again, Puerto Rico is part of the United States, and the Spanish Caribbean in general, not even the parts that aren't part of the United States, they're not big soccer countries. They're mostly baseball countries. Uh, Latin America is divided between your baseball countries and your soccer countries. Your soccer countries is more South America. Your baseball countries are more the Caribbean basin, right? Football is not popular in any of the Latin American countries. American football is not. American football doesn't even have a lot of Latinos, American Latinos in it. I think I can name on one hand the amount of Latinos that are in American football. Yeah, see, yeah, I was correct. Australia has Aussie and Rugby League. Gridiron is growing in Australia as well. Yeah, uh, Polynesian people like Maoris, native New Zealanders, they're really good at both rugby and American gridiron football, just because of the way they're built. Latinos, not really so much. This is what's kind of getting at the heart of this is like you're trying to appeal to a community that doesn't even like football. You know what I mean? That's kind of getting at it. Like football is not in Latin American communities, whether they be uh, in the United States or in Latin America itself. Football is not American football. Gridiron football is not um, the most popular sport. I would say boxing or baseball um, or soccer, boxing, baseball, and soccer among Latinos. You know, those things appeal to Latinos a hell of a lot more than American football. So, yeah, Aaron says he wouldn't be surprised. So it was a really weird choice. But then there's racism tied to it as well. You know what I mean? Xenophobia tied to it. Um, it's no secret that Bad Bunny is um, very liberal. He's a very anti-ICE. As a matter of fact, the little kid that he brought out, people said that that was a representative of the kid Ramos from ICE, the kid that was in Minnesota from ICE. You know what I mean? So, like, he made a political statement. So, um, they saw it as political, but everybody they're gonna get is going to be on the left. You know what I mean? Like, so my question is this a thing just because he's Latino or just because he sings in Spanish? Like, because a lot of people said that, like, he sings in Spanish. I don't understand anything he's talking about. Why is he? Why does it look like he's only catering to one particular demographic? And I agree. You know what I mean? Like, it was a beautiful performance. It was a beautiful celebration of Puerto Rican music, Puerto Rican culture, Puerto Rican history, and Caribbean culture and Caribbean history. But at the same time, you know, um, he didn't have one song in English, and that's why they had to throw the Lady Gaga song in there because he didn't have one song in English at all. You know what I'm saying? And you're in the United States, and you're performing primarily for an American audience. Not exclusively for an American audience, but primarily for an American audience. And we can get into technicalities. Technically, Puerto Rico is America legally, but we're talking about culturally. You know what I mean? Culturally, the United States proper, put it that way. The United States proper is part of the Anglosphere, and it speaks English. It's not an official language. You know what I mean? Because the United States doesn't have an official language, but it is part of um, the English speaking world. To pretend otherwise is just being intellectually right, exactly, mainland USA. To pretend otherwise is just being intellectually dishonest. You know what I mean? To pretend otherwise. It's just like with Mandani. You know what I mean? To pretend for Mandani to pretend that Islam, his religion, Islam, is on equal footing in the United States with, say, Christianity, which America is a historically Christian nation and part of the West, is just intellectually dishonest. And liberals do the same thing when it comes to that. Like we know that these communities exist, but these communities are minority communities for a reason. You know what I mean? So to have a Super Bowl performance that is exclusively dedicated, and even though you might be of Latino heritage, but you don't speak Spanish, right? So then that excludes you as well. You know what I mean? Not every Latino speaks Spanish. Latinos have been in this country for generations. There are generations upon generations of Latinos and Hispanics who don't understand Spanish. You know what I'm saying? So that excludes them as well. So you're excluding a large swath of people and you're catering to this small minority at the expense of the majority. So that's what I think people had a problem with. I don't think for some people it probably was racism, it probably was xenophobia, it probably was a hatred of Latinos. But I don't think necessarily, you know what I mean, uh, that's what they're mad at. It's just that like you're going out of your way to cater to a specifically small minority of people. You know what I mean? And I defended Bad Bunny when he was wrestling the mixed tag match in WrestleMania 37 back in 2021. I said the same thing back then. I'm like, well, I'm a Hispanic. I listen to his music. I like his music. But at the same time, I can understand why some people be like, well, who the hell is this guy? You know what I'm saying? Because he has zero songs in English. He doesn't have a crossover appeal with an English audience. People don't know who he is necessarily. In places where there are large Latino communities like California, like parts of Texas, parts of South Florida, parts of the Northeast, yeah, they will know who he is. I mean, Chicago, Illinois, with large Latino communities, especially Puerto Ricans, they will know who he is. No doubt they will. Even if they're not Latino, they're African Americans or they're whites or Asians, they will know who he is because they live around Latinos. Latinos congregate in these places. But in a lot of these other places, where there aren't large Latino communities, they won't know who he is. He's not a well-known star, but to act like he is just intentionally misleading. You know what I mean? So I get that, but at the same time, I feel like what TPUSA did was kind of gay too, because let me change it up. It was kind of like lame also. You know what I mean? Because that's like saying, "Oh well, you're gonna have a prom that celebrates sexuality, but we're gonna have a Christian prom." you know, you know what I mean? Like we're gonna have a Christian prom, and our Christian prom is gonna be better than your regular prom. And I think uh, Candace Owens Candace Owens made a comment about this. She says, I'm coming out against both performances at the Super Bowl. On the one hand, you have one person who doesn't even have one song in English. On another hand, you have a scammer that can a scam organization that is continuously scamming people and uh, and lying about the amount of views they got. So I think that perfectly sums it up. That performances both performances have issues. You know, the TPUSA performance was just lame, a lame attempt at trying to do a counter performance. Hey, counter performances, alternative halftime shows have been done before, right? The WWE did one. Remember halftime heat in 1999, the empty arena match between The Rock and Mankind? That got more views than the TPUSA performance. Candace Owens is 100% right that uh, you know, that that was a lame attempt by Erica Kirk and co. I mean, obviously she doesn't like Erica Kirk. There's reasons for her to dislike her. So there's personal beefs there. But at the same time, I agree with both sentiments. You know, both halftime shows were lacking. You have a guy who did no songs in English. And I think that was, I don't know. I don't know. Uh, Again, it was a beautiful performance, but at the same time, like, it's like you go to a party, right? Put it this way. Here's a perfect analogy for you. You go to a party and you know that your party is going to be 99.9% American, right? And you hire a DJ that plays no music in English, you know, and you expect people to like that and to appreciate that. They might appreciate the performances, they might appreciate the symbolism, like I said, but they won't really appreciate the songs because they cannot relate to it. Music is not universal, was what DJ Vlad said. DJ Vlad says music is not universal. Only 14% of Americans speak Spanish. Okay? Right, right. Aaron's right. My name's Sunday from the World Cup. You know, you're again. This is an example, but like I said, both sides were forced. MAGA was forced. The MAGA Bowl was forced, and this was forced. Candace is 100% right. Candace Owens is 100% right. They're both sides. Come on, that TPUSA bullshit. That was bullshit. You know what I mean? But this was bullshit too. This was forced. This was forced on people. You know what I mean? Bad Bunny is not that popular with the United States. People in the United States that are outside of the Latino community, and they're acting like he was. You know what I mean? They knew that bringing in Lady Gaga was there to save face, right? It was a beautiful performance, and you were Hispanic, and you were Latino, and you understood the symbolism, like Lisa pointed out, the symbolism, right? On a Facebook post that she accused me of plagiarizing, which I didn't. I didn't even. I had what I was gonna say in my mind already, you know. You know what I mean? But like Vlad said, I agree with Vlad. Only 14% speak Spanish, so you're representing an extremely tiny minority, and of that tiny minority, how many like Bad Bunny's music? You know what I mean? Like, he has a huge reach globally, but he has no reach practically in the United States. So they had to bring in Lady Gaga to save face. You know what I mean? To bring something that Anglos could dance to. Because when you go to a party, again, you have to consider your audience. If you go to a party that is primarily a punk rock club, right? If I'm in a punk rock club and would it be appropriate for me to play hip hop? No. Would it be appropriate for me to play country music in a hip hop club? No, it's nothing against country music, nothing against hip hop, but that's not your audience. The audience for the Super Bowl is primarily Americans, right? Primarily Americans, and Americans speak English. It's nothing against Hispanics, nothing against Latinos. For some people, I'm sure it is. You know what I'm saying? For some people, I'm sure they don't like Latinos, they don't like Hispanics, right? These racists, these MAGA people, right? They're racist, right? Some of them, not all, some, right? You have to preface it with not all, because both sides will attack you. Some of them are racist. Some of them don't like Latinos or Hispanics, right? Xenophobic. But it's not like that for everybody. I don't think DJ Vlad is racist. I don't think some of these other people are racist. But they are saying, listen, we want something that we could understand, something that we could relate to. We don't want uh, the experience to be completely alien to us. Even me, I'm Latino, I'm Hispanic, but I'm not a fan of Latino music. I'm not really a fan of Latin music like that. So when I watched it with my girlfriend, right, who is a fan of his music and is a fan of Latin music, right, she connected with it and I did not. You know what I'm saying? Even though we both share that heritage, I'm just not a fan of it. You know what I mean? Of that style of music. I didn't like the TPUSA stuff because I'm not a fan of that music either, nor am I a fan of that politics. But as far as what it represented, as far as like the performance itself, yeah, it was a great performance. It was picturesque. It was something different. It was history in the making. But on the downside, I don't think they'll be doing that again because of how the reaction they got to it, how alienated people felt. You know, it was different than last year. Last year, yes, people didn't like Kendrick Lamar, but because people don't like hip hop, but at least people understood what he was saying. They didn't understand what Bad Bunny was saying. You know what I mean? Just like DJ Vlad said, we say Nas is a great lyricist, but if you look at somebody that doesn't understand English, how great of a lyricist would Nas be? You know, so Bad Bunny might be a great lyricist in Spanish, but if a person doesn't understand Spanish, then how great of a lyricist can Bad Bunny be? So all we then have is the imagery. All we then have is the symbolism to look at, not really the songs. Because to be honest, Monday morning everybody's on his dick, but at the same time, how many people were actually Bad Bunny fans before this? You know what I'm saying? How many people actually purchased a Bad Bunny CD? So that's all, guys. Thank you, Lisa, for contributing. Thank you, Aaron, for contributing as well. Peace, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.